Hello, everybody. I'm really happy to be welcoming back to our channel and to the conversation my dear friend Anna Wholeheart to come and talk to us about archetypes, energetics, and the ways in which our religious backgrounds and spiritual inclinations can either harm us or even help us in exploring a more fully embodied sexual self. Anna, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to meet with you again.
Yeah, me too. Me too. And if you happen to be joining us for the first time, I wanted to share a little bit with you about Anna's background. She has a BFA in dance performance and choreography. She has over 15 years experience exploring energy, the physicality, and the artistry of the body through dance. And while she's taught and lectured on university levels and on private levels, she also began experiencing more phenomenon that she couldn't account for either in her religious upbringing or her more standard trainings, gifts of clairsentience, clairaudience, and clairvoyance. And these unaccounted for and life enhancing experiences led her to study global indigenous practices, Eastern spiritual paradigms, Western depth psychotherapy, and contemporary energy healing models, deepening a sense of how she can come back into herself and have community around her who are also on these paths of exploration of the full spectrum of what it means to live an embodied and wide awake life. And that is what we are wanting to dive into some today. And as we were talking a little bit before the recording, you were telling me about the paradox that you experience, maybe especially as a woman, but that you note happens in Western culture in general, where on the one hand, sexuality is really hyped, like it's everywhere. It's in our television shows, it's in our advertising to sell us things, like sex is everywhere. And at the same time, it's also shamed, whether it is in over religious structures where sexuality is seen as dangerous or sinful if it doesn't conform within certain paradigms, or even just more of a general secular sense of propriety. There seems to be a lot of shutdown around sexuality. Can you talk to us about how you see this paradox showing up and what it might mean?
Yeah, thank you. And thanks for that introduction. Yeah, all of these things are quite pervasive in our culture and our experience collectively. I'm sure a lot of us have heard of the archetypes of the virgin and the whore. My experience as a woman, I've experienced both of those archetypes projected onto me quite a bit. And I think that most of us have. And for men, they are experienced in different ways. We have um, the archetypes of the king, warrior, lover, magician. I love that book that Gillette, and I can't remember the second author, but just did. But, it really is, it can be a challenge to fit into what is culturally appropriate or what is culturally expected. And, I know for me, I've experienced that virgin complex of like needing to be almost hidden in the sexuality, pretend that it doesn't exist,
Mm.
growing up in religion or just really repressing it. When it starts to come up, they teach you all sorts of ways to push that down. And then all of a sudden, getting married, when it's like, oh, here now it's appropriate and it's good and you're supposed to be sexual, having a really hard time accessing that part that gets really turned on because you've practiced pushing it down and
Mm.
it's not a light switch. It doesn't just turn on and flip on. And I know men and women and all genders experience this type of a thing when not having our access to our turn on and sexuality when we want it, and having it be up and ready at times when it's not quite appropriate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely, Anna. Same experience. We grew up in different versions of fundamentalist religion and Christianity, and I would say same in my background. It was like, sex is this very dirty thing, so save it for someone you love. And
Right.
getting, if you're one of those people like I was, even waiting until my honeymoon to fully, have and explore sex, it's not just a light switch. I don't, we don't necessarily know what we're doing. And I think that there's, unique cultural pressures on men that we're always ready to go, that we're, and that
Mhm.
sex means certain things, arousal wise, anatomically, etc. And, guys can feel a lot of shame and shut down if either we're sort of, young and less experienced, or perhaps we're approaching midlife and getting older and parts and plumbing aren't working the ways that we imagine that they should. There's just a lot of really human and really tender and fraught elements to sexuality that, both religion and mainstream culture don't give enough attention to.
Yeah, exactly. For men, the men that I work with and the men that I come to, my workshops and that I work one-on-one with, the biggest thing I hear from them is around performance, that sex is supposed to be a performance. Like,
Mm-hmm.
it's not supposed to be intimate and connective and even a joyful experience. It's a performance, like a stage. And if they don't perform and do a good job, then they're not, a man in some way. And when I hear that from men, it just breaks my heart. It breaks my heart to hear that because, and going from my experience, I have a similar one. I got married when I was 18 and a half. My husband was 22, and we waited till our honeymoon to be sexual and have sex. And, um, it was such a strange experience because when we were dating and we had all of this pressure of we couldn't have sex, the sexual energy and the turn on was through the roof.
Mm-hmm.
It was like,
Yeah.
so hot because there's that, that constraint, right? There's that constraint. It's like when I saw the Twilight movies or when I actually read the Twilight books, I was like, oh yeah, when you're not allowed to do something, then it's great. There's all this turn on. And then all of a sudden, when we got married and we were, quote, allowed to have this exploration, my nervous system just freaked out. My nervous system did not know what to do. I went into a stress response and I could not find my turn on in a lot of ways, it was very elusive to me for years. For
Wow.
years, it was
Wow.
very elusive. It would come and it would go, and it would be like there when I didn't expect it, and then not there when I wanted it to be. And it honestly was a source of such heartbreak for both of us.
Mm.
And as we began to unpack religion and unpack a lot of these conditioning, we found that our sexual relationship just needed so much healing. We
Mm.
didn't even realize what was going on with the other one. For my husband, it was a lot around performance and a lot around, am I doing good enough? Am I doing a good job? Am I able to please? Right?
Yeah.
When we're in that Wheel of Consent container that I love that book, The Wheel of Consent by Betty Martin, both of us were really trying to be in our give
Mm.
because that's what you're taught in religion too, is it's better to give than receive. You really need to give. But the problem is, if both of you are trying to give, who is receiving?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Nobody.
Is
And
nobody
so,
there to receive?
let alone, I love Betty Martin's work because she talks about the dynamics of really how to give and how to serve and really how to receive and accept the service. And then she goes into another quadrant that I had never even heard about called take and allow.
Mm-hmm.
And when I first heard of take, I was just like, what are you talking about? You're not supposed to take. You're not supposed to take anything that's not yours. But she really talks about taking pleasure in something, taking pleasure in eating a chocolate cake, taking pleasure in playing with Play-Doh, just feeling the sensation that's in your hands and that's on the skin.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other side of the take is the allow, allowing yourself to be taken, allowing yourself to surrender, allowing someone really access to you. And I had been taught so much protection in my life. As a woman, you have to be on alert and people are going to try to take advantage of you. And especially in sexuality. When you grow up with the virgin complex, you grow up as, it's my job to always say no to sex. That's my job, is to stop it. And don't give people access to you because it's bad and they'll take advantage of you. So allowing access, allowing myself to actually really open my energy and open my body to allow someone to take pleasure in me, of course, in consent and in, you know, if in my boundaries, that was really new. But I found that to be such a source of freedom and such a source of healing within a deep long-term relationship that, you know, can be very, there's a lot of pain associated with when you're trying, when you love someone so much and you're in a deep committed relationship, but you've gone through so much trauma together that your bodies aren't responding. There's a lot of pain there.
Yeah.
And it was so lovely to understand what could be healing in that situation.
Yeah, for sure. It sounds like, you know, you and your partner both stepped into a place where on that, you know, as it's called, wheel of consent, you can decide what pole you want to occupy in a given encounter. Do I want to be in my take? Do I want to be in my allow? Do I want to be in my give? Do I want to be in my receive? And it sounds like it maybe gave you some of your agency back.
That's a great way to put it. That's a great way to put it, where, yeah, it allows for choice to come in. It allows for agency to come in and freedom, because you don't have to play a certain script.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of times when we're in very traditional backgrounds, and again, these are the messages that we get archetypally that are so confusing, because so many times we're taught that a man needs to be dominant and a woman needs to be submissive, or vice versa. The woman needs to be, oh, get out of those old paradigms. The woman needs to be really controlling and take control and be in a power play, and the woman and the man needs to be more submissive. And what these dynamics can actually teach us is there's no right way.
Yeah.
And you can change all the time in any given encounter. Now, you know, my partner and I have these cues, and we have these recipe ingredients that we can say, oh, I want to be in my take. Okay, great. We know what that means. We've practiced it enough. We've gotten our bodies used to the sensations enough. And we've understood the energetics. Because on the outside, if you look at someone who's giving and you look at someone who's taking, it actually can look really similar. You can't even visually tell if they're doing something different, but the intention and the energy is different, and you can feel it. It's palpable.
Yeah. Am I doing this for my pleasure, or am I doing this for your pleasure?
Exactly. Who is this for?
Good things. Yeah. Yeah. Both are good things. And yeah, having that clarity as a launching point, you know, is a real gift. And I love what you said too about how you've learned there's no one right way. I think that is a real gift that I've received from our queer siblings, our non-binary and gender non-conforming siblings, is that for them, so many of them, love and sexuality can look so many different ways. It's like, you know, locked in this binary of gender and gender roles. I tend to think of, like you said, historically, man should be dominant, woman should be submissive, or in maybe, you know, some of the pendulum swings where understandably women are reclaiming more rights and sovereignty, believing that they always need to be on and always need to be dominant, and that men should learn to submit for a change. And here our queer and non-binary siblings come around and say, well, first, what do we even mean by man and woman? And also, what do we mean by it has to be this way? And I understand how some people, especially from more traditional backgrounds, can find that to be like highly disconcerting and destabilizing. But I think that as we bring intentionality and precision to every aspect of our lives, that can really be a gift.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm so glad that you brought up, you know, our non-binary and queer and all of our different places that we are as a human family right now, because you know, when I started to understand more about what is, you know, maybe yin and yang energy, could be masculine and feminine, what's not male, female, but really masculine, feminine, or yin and yang. Where can I be receptive, or where can I be action oriented and initiate? all of those different places are really important for us as humans because we all have yin and yang energy. We have it and we want to explore it and we want to do it on purpose. One of the things that I mentioned, you know, understanding that like when I was suppressing my sexual energy, like as a teenager and as like a dating person, having that container of a no and a boundary was actually so sexy. And
Mm,
that's one of the things that we can use now as we're healing,
mm,
is that container and that set space of a no. And I want to do this. I don't want to do this can be really, really sexy.
mhm,
And that goes for all of our, give, receive, take, allow, dominant, submissive um, places is I think the more boundary you put on something and the more they say, you know what, you can touch me everywhere except here. Oh, where do you want to touch? That one place. And it
mm.
becomes very, very hot and sexy that you can't. So creating a boundary of we're doing this and we're not doing that is very, very sexy. And it's a healing way to use our sexual energy.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah. As you're saying that, it helps me have an appreciation, yeah, for the role of boundaries, even when they were imperfectly applied, to put it mildly, in our religious traditions. Like I'm a religion nerd and a theology nerd, kind of looking at how different beliefs and community structures function historically, and even looking at how those might map to our own developmental models as individuals. And so when I think about certain traditional religions who have very externally imposed rules, I think that at its healthiest, those rules were put into place for good intentions to maintain societal order, to help ensure that individuals and families and whole communities were harmoniously functioning, not killing each other, not stealing each other's stuff,
Yeah.
etc. And most religions have what's known as like an exoteric or externally facing set of teachings and beliefs and practices, as well as an esoteric core that is more internally motivated as we experience the divine for ourselves and move from becoming what are often called literally little children to becoming, sons or daughters or friends of God or of the divine. And we begin to be able to make more sovereign choices from a place of co-creation with the divine. So when I hear you saying how you were able to capture that, what at the time was maybe, an unwelcome suppression, don't do this, but it was also really hot in a way to not be able to, until you had no, you had no restrictions. It went from one pendulum swing to the other, and you're like, well, what do I even do? To realize, oh, I can be in tune with my own values, my own body at this moment, what I genuinely want, and even consciously put a boundary over something I might want, but I'm wanting to be kind of like kink play with it and say I don't for the sake of this container. And then suddenly you've recovered a different usage of restriction that at one point only seemed to harm you, and now it's actually quite helpful.
Yeah, that's a great way, great explanation and a great summary. Exactly. And my verbiage I use is I believe we are embodiments of the divine. We have the divinity flowing through us. And so there are so many ways to understand what that is. There's divinity in the plants and in the animals and how alive they are and the cycles of nature and water and earth and fire and all of those elements are flowing through us. We are made of stardust, we are made of elements, we are elemental beings. And so with that comes so many flavors. And what I feel has been so healing is to understand that religiosity gave me a flavor.
Hmm.
And really, there's a wonderful book called Existential Kink. I'm sure many of us have heard of it, many of us have read it, but her premise in that book is that whatever has in our life has felt repressive or has felt like a shadow or something that we're maybe ashamed of or embarrassed by actually can be fuel for us. It can be a gold mine for us, and it can be a place where we can actually find a lot of pleasure and a lot of wonder and bliss in it. She kind of says, why did your soul choose? For me, the question would be, why did my soul choose to be in a place where I was raised sexually repressed and to believe that, sex had to be so boundaried?
Mm.
Well, maybe it's because I actually really liked it and really liked boundary and a no and repression. And yes, that's where kink comes in. My one of the really healing paths for me have been kink and tantra. And tantra for me has been understanding energy and energy flow and intention and heart to heart, real and an embodied connection. And kink for me has really been understanding practicality of how to use this energy.
Mm.
So you'll find, like, whenever someone comes to me and they have had a religious background or they have repressed sexually, or they've had shame, not even religious, just had shame from whatever, I'm always like, okay, great. We've got a gold mine to work with,
Mhm.
because just as much as that was repressed, that is going to be a fountain for you. And we just got to find the magic button on that. Where is the little boundary that we can go to? Where is the story? Where is the energy? Where is it for you? And we'll find it. And it's very specific for people. Sometimes it's very specific, sometimes it's very general. But yeah, that's one of my favorite things to do with clients, is to find where the door gets unlocked, because they've been locking down, right? They've been locking it down for so long. The key to me a lot of times is in the kink and tantra, in the polarity, understanding give and receive, submissive and dominant. To me, polite sexuality kills everything. We want to be egalitarian and polite and kind, and we want to have equality and all that outside of the bedroom. But as soon as you start putting politeness in the bedroom and egalitarianism, as far as, like, of course, everyone's consent matters completely, but the dynamics have to be, we have to create some push and pull and some tension and some, that's where a lot of aliveness is.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm so glad that you brought into the explicit frame of the conversation how, both tantra and kink are informing your own, sexuality, spirituality, personal practice, and how you work with clients. This kind of reminds me of something that we talked about in the pre-recording conversation, where you were talking about another element that sort of gets pendulum swung from one side to the other. Of course, in religion, something that is often taught, which has a grain of truth in it, is that sex is not simply a physical act. There is a spiritual dimension to sex. And oftentimes when people are leaving or deconstructing or transitioning their faith or their spiritual practice, they might be tempted to go into another extreme to say, sex is simply a physical act of no other consequence, and if we treat it as such, we'll be happier and have better sex. And yet oftentimes people in that paradigm don't find that they're happier or having better sex. And you mentioned something around how, having a religious or spiritual background could actually be an asset to a fuller sexuality. Do you want to speak a little bit more to that?
Yeah, absolutely. I find that have people, a lot of people coming from a spiritual lineage, their hearts are quite open. Their crown is quite open. So the connection to the divine, the connection to love, has to be there. I think to make the connection then into the body be complete. So, a lot of religion says get up and out of the body. The body is an enemy to God. The body is, an animal that we don't need to inhabit. And so they sort of, but actually you can't get out of your body because you're human. And so they start to just really, really focus on the heart and just loving people, loving people, loving people. Or they focus on the surrender and the prayer and the letting go, which is very crown. But what Tantra and kink does is it brings that divine energy that's maybe up and out of the body, that's very cosmic, it brings it down into where you can inhabit your sexuality more. And it can, on the other hand, so there are a couple of pathways. It's about bringing the divine and channeling it down through the body, but it's also about when we do find that turn on that is genital, that is root and sacral. It's about also bringing that up and spreading it up and out to the heart and up and out to the rest of the body. And this is where, tantric sex has this, I guess, reputation for having fully embodied sexual experiences, fully embodied orgasm even, and sexual experiences that last a long time because they're actually connecting with the energy of the cosmos. We're connecting not just to us, but to the person in front of us and to the divine at the same time. One other thing that I have found really helpful in this space is understanding human design. There's probably some people who understand what human design is, others don't. Human design is a modality that stems from the I Ching, which is what traditional Chinese medicine is based in. And in human design, when you get farther and farther into it, it's multi-layered, but there are 3 channels. There are 3 channels sexually in this space. One of them is what is called primal. I'm sorry, it's called tribal. It's called tribal. And tribal sex, I would say, is probably more what religion and society has wanted us to have. Hey, sex is for mating. It is for, so we know I go with you and you go with me. And so we know that there's a good division of labor. You're going to go to work and I'll do this work. And we know that the cows will get milked and everyone will eat. And it has a very tribal survival nature. We need that part. Kids want to know who is mommy and who is daddy, or at least that's who is mommy and daddy and daddy. They want to know who goes with who. Okay, so that's one function of sex. And that is in human design. To understand how these maps of human design works is not everybody is going to have that channel. Not everyone will have it. Some people will have it very strongly, and other people will not have it at all. So that's why, to me, it's important to say there's not one way to do this. Some people that feels so natural, and that's all they want. Some people, not at all. So then the second channel is called what's individual. That is the, excuse me.
Bless you.
Thank you. That is the romantic. That is the I love you and no one else. And I don't really care about milking the cows, and I don't really care about family. I care about you, and you are my beloved, and we should write poetry together, and we should, sing each other's songs and all the things, right? And that form of sexuality is so infatuated. It's the love of their life. It's their soulmate, and this one thrives on tension. It thrives on will we, won't we, will we, won't we, it thrives on tension. It needs that romance and being spurned, and then romance and flirtation and will they, all that is very an individual channel. Some people are going to have that channel, others won't. This channel is very verbal. It really wants to hear the things. Tell me you love me. And there's going to be other people that don't have that channel. They're going to be like, why are you telling me this? Just show me. Just show me. Why are you telling me? So the third channel is what's called abstract, or sometimes it's called Kundalini channel. This is the channel that is, look, I don't really care about the romance as much. I don't really care about raising kids with you. What I care about is this sexual energy that is running through us and that is let's do it. Let's be spontaneous. If the energy is there, we're doing it. It's I don't even need to call you later necessarily. I don't even need to see you later. I may not even need to know your name. It's this energy that is just very embodied sexual energy, primal force. There are some people who have these channels and some people just don't. And I'm not saying you can never have that experience if you don't have the channel. I myself don't have that channel, but I feel like I still have access to that primal space, but I've learned to access it rather than just having it naturally. So human design can tell you what is there naturally, and it can also let you know what's not there. So if you want to cultivate something, you can. So people that are very naturally Kundalini and naturally in the abstract channel, that they really know in their heart they want to get married and they want to have the kid and they want to do the tribal thing, they can learn to cultivate that,
Hmm.
even though it's not necessarily supernatural for them. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah, it does. So yeah, learning one's, basic human design orientation and then developing a fluency with the arenas that we might not be as proficient in, but desire to be.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Mhm. Yeah, that's powerful. And talk to me about the symbol of the trident within Tantra and how that might apply to what we've been talking about.
Yeah, thank you for asking. In Tantra, there's a trident. You'll see it all the time. You'll see different, and not just in Tantra, you'll see it in different gods. The symbology, of course, of Neptune, we know he has a trident, and Kali Ma, who has a trident. Shiva has a trident. Um, what does it
Aquaman, if
mean?
you've read the comics or seen the movie, Aquaman has a trident.
Yeah, Aquaman. He's got a trident.
Yeah, which is a kind of Neptune.
So
Yeah.
yeah, it has three prongs.
Yeah.
So the first prong, in the one with Shiva, the trident above the first prong is a goddess. She is beautiful and ethereal and peaceful and very angelic looking. And what she represents is the place in us that is it's sort of more in the crown and in the heart and angelic and being light and love, right? She's that part of us that exists in that space. On the other end of the trident, the farther end is a goddess that looks very primal and animalistic, and maybe she's got sharper teeth and some fangs, and she's more earthy and down in those lower chakras of the animal within. And that's what she does represent is our lower and I don't mean less than, what I mean is literally lower chakras, the root and the sacral, the earth-based chakras of the body. And then in the middle of the middle prong there is what is a goddess really that looks more like human. It's more like a human, where she has components of the angelic and she has components of the animal. And what that trident is really trying to show us is that we are all three of those beings, but we are really that balanced. The point is to try to balance into that middle space where we do get to be divine and angelic and love and light, and we do get to be primal and animalistic and embodied and rough, and we have smells, and all that good stuff. And then in the middle, we get to be both. And what Tantra would say is sometimes you don't have to even be that balanced all the time. Sometimes just fully let yourself be animalistic. Sometimes fully let yourself be in the love and light. And then sometimes you're going to get to be both. And let's not shame any of that exists. Of course, all with always in consent.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. That's such a vivid picture, and it reminds me of what I've also heard, you and your partner teach around Tantra being like the marriage of heaven and earth coming together at the locus of us. And in some of the contemplative and esoteric paths that I follow, we talk about, not only the exoteric of religion and society and the esoteric of the mystical depths, but the mesoteric, which is actually where those two interface and where they meet together. In ecological terms, it would be known as like an ecotone, like or a zone where different ecosystems are meeting together. So maybe like where a mountain is coming down into a valley, or where the ocean is meeting the shore. And often in those places, there's such a rich biodiversity that is possible. And even in the Abrahamic traditions of Judaism, Christianity, and Islam in our scriptures, they say things like, you are dust, and to dust you will return, but also you're just a little bit lower than the angels. Like there's this
Mm.
whole range of experience and possibility inside of us, and that
Mhm.
it seems to me sexuality, like few other areas in life, are a way that we can explore that original innocence, that primal passion, and that place where the angel and the animal meet inside of us.
Absolutely. I would say that so many of us in religious tradition have spent a lot of time in the angelic, the light and love.
Hmm.
And even when we hear the words lower than the dust, we hear that as a judgment
Yeah.
that dust is bad and quote low. But
Right.
if you literally look at it as like height differential, the
Uh-huh.
earth is just down below our feet.
Yeah.
But if you look at that dust and that earth, it is where, look at outside right now, my daffodils are blooming and
Mhm.
it's like coming from that winter space of just dark nothing. We're getting these shoots that are coming out of the ground. And if you look at the ground, it's life-giving. Where does all of our food come from?
Mhm.
All of our food,
Well,
all of the beauty of the flowers, that dirt, that dust is powerful, life-giving, life-affirming beauty and nourishment. And if I'm going to take people that have been in this space, in the religious space, if I want to take them anywhere, usually it's introducing them to the earth. It's
mhm.
introducing them to their lower chakras for the
Yeah.
first time, really.
Yeah. 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 On earth as it is in heaven, bringing it down into the soil. Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
One last little symbology. I love symbology, and I love talking with you, Mike, because you understand so much of the scripture and so much of the symbols and things. But I remember when I first started learning some esoteric symbols and from a different perspective than just a Christian one.
Yeah.
I came across again a tantric teaching, or I think it's a hermetic teaching
Mm.
about the cross and about the ankh. The ankh is the Egyptian one that has the rounded at top.
Mhm.
And it talked about how the cross was actually, or in this belief system, it was about that meeting place. It was heaven being the vertical plane and then earth being the horizontal plane. And
Mhm.
where they came together is truly the heart. And that, this is a place where even in that ancient symbology of the cross, it can mean something in addition, or mean something else, or it can take on new meaning where, you know, um, I don't think we always have to throw out everything that we've learned. Sometimes they evolve and sometimes they take new shape and sometimes they just have new understanding
Yeah.
of what those things mean.
Yeah. Absolutely. Cross as the sort of axis point where everything converges. Yeah.
Hmm.
So Anna, if folks listening to this feel compelled, like I certainly do, and they want to learn more, they want to access more of your teachings, or maybe even have a session with you. Obviously, if you're blessed to live in Western North Carolina like we do, you have some in-person offerings, and frankly, some people travel to experience those with you. But can you tell us like a range of what you're offering right now in ways that folks can connect?
Yeah, thanks for mentioning that. I do work on Zoom and over the phone, so I love to do one-on-one sessions in that way. And sometimes they're just one-off sessions where we meet, one or two times, or I have people that sometimes just do once, like an intensive 2 or 3 sessions, and then not again for a while. My partner and my husband and I both do mentoring where we do, maybe intensive for 2 or 3 months. Um, and this is for people who are just barely going through maybe what they would call an awakening or an understanding of newness in their lives. And this is also for people who have been doing it a long time and have just sort of reached a place where they're like, okay, I know there's something more and there's something deeper I want to go to. We both my partner and I have been doing this and exploring long enough to take both beginner and very experienced people through these journeys. We also do events at workshops and where you can come and experience in person. And we do those generally once a month. We do them kind of all over the place. We have one in Seattle coming up in April here in Western North Carolina. We do those about once a month as well. In July, we're going to have like a 3 or 4 day one that we're excited about. It's going to be a little bit longer. And we generally, people do fly in for those and they drive in for those because they are a transformative experience where we go through um, all of the portals. We go through the crown and the connection to divine. We go through the heart. We go through the sexuality channel to understand how they can all integrate. And those 3 or 4 day experiences are quite transformational and life changing for us. And there's something about the group dynamic where we all get together and we're all having the same intention, we can support one another. And there's a magic that is created in the group energy that cannot be replicated. So for us, there's lots of different ways. My website is journeywithanna.com. We also have another Whole Heart Awakening website, wholeheartawakening.com. So yeah, feel free to reach out. And usually there's a price point and a time commitment for just about everybody.
Yes, absolutely. Journeywithanna.com, wholeheartawakenings.com. They will be in the show notes as well. And yeah, well, thank you so much for your time today, Anna, and for your rich experiences that you share with us. I'm sure we'll be doing this again.
Thank you, Michael.